What's up, everybody? Andrew Clear here from the F1 podcast, bringing you season 5, episode 11. And today, unfortunately, it's just me because Erica and John are traveling this week for work. So you get number 3 of the options. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but okay, I'll try and make this fun. I'll try and make this exciting as we talk about the Spanish Grand Prix. It was quite an interesting weekend to begin overall. We had some retirements before and during the race. We had some unexpected results. We had interesting tire strategies, and we also had some end of the, race controversy. So all in all, made for a great Spanish Grand Prix. But let's start with qualifying in the new technical directive that was announced. So what the FIA did is they brought in a tougher load test for the front wing, being imposed from the Spanish Grand Prix onwards. They were going to test it. They've been testing it since Belgium of last year, which unfortunately came back inconclusive. So they wanted teams to ease into this technical directive this year. As a result, starting it, excuse me, with the Spanish Grand Prix onward. What it is that, there was a lot of concerns that there was a ton of flex in the front wing for a lot of these teams, and it created greater performance or gained opportunities there within that flex. So what they did is whenever they were testing the, I guess, vertical deflection of the wing when there's weight put onto it of just 100 kilograms, is that there can't be now more than 10 millimeters to 15 millimeters, depending on the deflection point, where back in the day it was 15 to 20. So with that being said, there were a lot of rumors beforehand saying that, oh, that's going to hurt McLaren and going to benefit Red Bull. But, those are only rumors because we only have, you don't know until the Grand Prix actually happens. And with that said, we'll go into qualifying where McLaren looked fast. Of course they did. Why wouldn't they? They have the best car on the grid, regardless of some stupid technical directive that kind of came out for them. But with that being said, um, Oscar and Lando were just cream of the crop with regards to the first two qualifying sessions overall, with Oscar being the only one to get dip into the 111s in Q2. But in the first Q1, we had, I believe, was Yuki out, which is crazy in P20. I mean, for Braves and Red Bull, just, makes a lot of questions there. Colapinto P19, we had Sainz, crazy, right, going out in P18, Ocon, and then Nico Hülkenberg, who had a tough Saturday, but Sunday, pretty good. Nevertheless, though, he qualifies out in P16, and then we go to Q2, where we had Behrman, Lawson, Bortoleto, and Alvin out, but the one keynote is Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll. So, Stroll gets bounced in Q2. He's not very happy about it. What does he do? He just breaks some shit in the back. You know, some might say he throws a little bit of a hissy fit. Some might say he's a little pissed off about his results. And his team came out and said, yeah, Lance was upset and that but he has now sustained or he has sustained pain in his wrists, which apparently was not related to any of the Q2 back shenanigans that happened afterwards. Okay, yeah, whatever. Anyways, it's all geared based on the pain felt from the 2023 cycling injury, which smells like bullshit to me, but nevertheless, he removed himself from the Grand Prix, and then therefore 19 cars were on the grid, and everybody kind of moved up a spot. Who was eliminated behind him in Q1 and Q2, with the exception of Sonoda, who started in the pit lane in that regards. Now, it has been rumored that Plan A from Mike Crack this week has mentioned that Plan A is for Stroll to move forward with the Canadian Grand Prix. Apparently, he had a procedure on his wrist to help alleviate that pain, and now that he may be able to be ready to go for the Canadian Grand Prix, Stroll's home GP. On one hand, I see that you can't say that, I can see him coming back after a quick procedure like that, but I mean, is it really worth it in that point? We're now P9 in the championship overall. Lance has had a really, he's done well this year compared to his teammate Fernando Alonso, but overall they've just been struggling a lot in that car. And I've been a big guy. You may even say a hater of Lance Stroll and just how the way he acts and stuff like that too. And I guess to the point seeing where a lot of this emotion coming out, I think he does really care about his job. And you can tell that, but just the way that he kind of enacts it out is tough to understand. When he's trying to be all calm, cool, and collected in these interviews, not say much, right? Not give much to the media, tries to be stonewalled, and then he kind of does that behind the scenes. Unfortunately, it's tough to really get on his side in the sense that yeah, he does really care, and which I bet he does. I bet he does, right? He's probably pissed off about how bad the performance of the car is, and I don't blame him, but it almost looks petulant in a way based on the way he handles himself within the media and going from there. And so it's tough. I kind of want to see Lance care a little bit more in those interviews then at that point, just to show like, look, like I do give a shit about my job. I do want to be here. Even if you have to buy a car, we're doing our best to make things better. And, maybe taking his anger out some other way instead of breaking things uh, and whatnot, and getting in altercations with his teammates or team members. Sorry, but that's plan A is for him to race in Canada this week. If he's not eligible, if he's not available in terms of his injury, plan B is quite a spicy one. You could have either Stoffel Van Dorn or Felipe Drugovich, who are like the reserve drivers right now, be able to drive. Problem is they're at Le Mans this weekend coming up, and they're committed to Le Mans. So I don't know if really you can have a guy, I really don't know if they're going to want to back out of that, maybe for one race. Then the third reserve driver is Jack Crawford. He doesn't have enough points for his super license. So what do you do? The rumor, the rumbles have it is that Sebastian Vettel could sign a one race contract to come back. And honestly, it would be super cool to see Sebastian and Alonso as teammates for all their battles they had in the early 2010s to now be able to be teammates in 2025 would be just an incredible sight to see in the paddock. Would be just remarkable, and what a treat I think that would be for us, considering how the season's kind of been going that way. But hey, we'll see what happens. We'll probably have more information come the next week before the Canadian GP, which John and I will do a preview podcast of that. But only time will tell. I'm hoping personally it's Vettel that comes and races one time again with Fernando Alonso as his teammate, which would be pretty sick. But I was sorry, Q2 going into Q3. It was a McLaren festival, man. They look fantastic. Oscar with his fourth pole this season, Lando a couple tenths behind him in P2, and then Max Verstappen in P3. Him and Russell did set the same time, but Verstappen qualified ahead of Russell, so therefore Max gets the greater spot in terms of going P3, Russell P4. Lewis P5, Kimi Antonelli P6, Leclerc P7, Gasly P8, Hadjar P9, and our boy Fernando Alonso finishing P10, qualifying P10 at his home GP. Huge. Hopefully, at the time when I was thinking, like, we can score his first points of the year this weekend, which would be awesome to do at home. So we go with that into Sunday, and Sunday was crazy. I mean, it had everything. First off, we had off the line, we had Oscar defending his pole position early into the first corner, but Lando had a really bad start, which allowed Max to pass alongside him. And then on the left, and then he had George Russell on the right. Lando was able to defend from Russell, but wasn't able to defend from Max. So Max was able to get that P2 pretty quick. And that kind of set in stone like a three-stop strategy, which was kind of, a little outlandish out there. But at one point, you're wondering if Max could have done to Lando as what Lewis did to him back in 2021 in Spain, as well as the Hungarian Grand Prix a couple years earlier than that, right? Just being able to like nix an extra pit stop strategy, have the fresher tires, and kind of put McLaren into kind of a weird no man's land where, do you hit for fresher tires, lose valuable time, and then maybe have Max take you out over there, or do you try and stay out towards the end to be, to fend off Max as he comes through with those fresher tires. So, but as the course of events went on, we had Russell, which unfortunately having his issue trying to overtake Lando was then overtaken by Lewis Hamilton. Um, and by Leclerc. So unfortunately, it got Russell a couple spots back, which then Kimi and him were able to fight for positions. And then further back off in the first, it's like we had Liam Lawson, who was a legit bowling ball this weekend. I don't know how this guy didn't get any time penalties whatsoever for causing collisions. He clips Fernando Alonso in the back, and I'm thinking, great. That's not what we need. And then that unfortunately had to make Hulkenberg take evasive action, which then he led into Albon, which damaged his front wing. And so he had to go back to the pits and have it replaced. But the person that really benefited off that first start was Hulkenberg, who was able to weave his way through that carnage at the beginning, and then allowed him to take Alonso past in P10 into turn one of lap two. So he already gained 5 places by the end of lap two and into the points. Um, we saw that I think it was lap 9 or 10. Lewis and Leclerc swapped positions because Leclerc was the faster driver in that regards to that, on Sunday, I want to say. Lewis was very upset about it, and you could tell, unfortunately, in his interview with Rachel Brooks after the race didn't really go well. He did apologize to Rachel and the team, but Lewis is in a tough spot this year. He is now in a point where his teammates are consistently performing better than he is. And that's a tough pill to swallow when you've been the alpha teammate for the majority, like I say, the vast majority of your career. It is tough to know though that you are taken by a faster driver in Charles Leclerc, who has been that case. Was that case there on Sunday. But you know, championship pedigree. Lewis has that in his will to fight back. I'm hoping that he continues to push. I know it's a new team, so he's trying to still get used to the car, still trying to get used to the pace of, I guess the overall car in itself and the dynamics of it. But we'll see. We'll see in that regards. Blues lap 13, Norris passed Verstappen, but Verstappen kind of went to then to go take another set of softs, which he was able to burn through that rubber really quickly and, pretty much dispatch everybody who had yet to pit and really be able to gain a lot of ground. That it kind of forced um, Norris, then Piastri to kind of pit on 21 and 22, which he was able to undercut them and take the lead race now that he had older tires, but still, being able to have that position where he was able to maybe consistently bang out just some qualifying laps on those tires just to determine how it all went. But around that time, again, we had Liam Lawson doing his best bowling ball impression and hitting Albon again, which another issue with his front wing. So that is now race front wing number two for Albon that got clipped. Um, at that point, apparently had to take a penalty on that. He served it, then retired. So at that point, Albon's day was done because he had left the track and gained an advantage, they say. So to avoid the penalty drop for the grid drop in the next race, they served it and then, unfortunately, retired from the race. Um, I think Verstappen made his second stop around, I want to say lap 30-ish, where he switched the medium tire and was able to gain, go only back into fourth position against Piastri, Norris, and Leclerc. So he was able to, I think it was at that point, usually clear was going to be a three-stop strategy. It was just a matter of if they could, pass on those two. And again, try and turn it into a 2021 Spanish GP in that regards for Verstappen to overtake him into, again, another set of soft tires for which they could try and catch up to Piastri and Norris. The only issue was is that he had to defend against two drivers as opposed to one that were ahead of him. And when he tried to, when he made his last stop on lap 48, both McLarens quickly responded against the undercut by stopping themselves, and then they both switched to softs, and Max wasn't able to gain up into those position spots. So, but I think at that point, what lap did he? I think he pitted around lap, yeah, 48, and so did Norris and then 49 and 50, um, in that regards. But where this kind of all changed was lap 55. Antonelli, who had been running in seventh the entire time, or that time, suffered engine failure, went into the gravel around, I think it was like turn 9 or turn 10, caused the safety car to deploy. And that led to a lot of people pitting for fresh tires at the restart. McLaren's had an extra set of softs to burn because they only had two stops at that point, while Max on the three stop race did not have an extra set of softs and had the only option tire he had left was a new hard tire. So he took the hard compound instead of keeping out on softs and leading the race. But what she was much displeased about over the tire radio, asking GP, what the hell is this tire? And GP with a sassy remark, it's hard. And Max is like, well, what the WTF? Why are we on the hard? And it was basically said to him it was the only option he had left. So at that point, at the end of lap 60, the safety car came in. Verstappen, really difficult finding it to warm his hard tires up, obviously, right? Everybody else on the softs had a great job being able to do so. Almost spun it out on the restart, which then allowed Leclerc in P4 to come right up his ass, maneuver around him, and be able to gain P3 as well as Russell. And in the attempt, you know, in that attempt, he felt like, Verstappen went up the rate, like went up on the inside, forced Verstappen to take the runoff and keep his position on P4. But, the team over the radio said, no, like you got to give the position back. When Max completely said, well, he was alongside me. What the hell am I supposed to do? I did everything. I took the run off. So you can kind of tell again his frustration building, 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 building until lap 64 when he apparently let Russell go by and he just said, F this and back, like dive bomb right into the side of Russell's car like as deliberately as could be. I mean, the steering wheel was turned. There was no intention for him to maneuver anything out, and then he takes the place back for some reason with the Verstappen. Then he ultimately let him through on the same lap. But I mean, he took a 10-second penalty. Oh, like what are you doing, Max? You're like third in the championship. You just can't do that. It's just, oh, so he received a 10-second penalty as a result. Meanwhile, McLaren just finished up with the final lap, no drama whatsoever. Piastri taking first, Lando Norris taking second, followed by Charles Leclerc, Russell, and then it was Verstappen in P5. But due to the 10-second penalty, he dropped all the way down to P10. So that leads to this final race classification of Oscar securing 25 points and converting pole to his made to a victory. We had Lando Norris converting his P2 to another P2 finish, so another double podium for McLaren, as DJ Cal would say, another one. Charles Leclerc, P3 for Ferrari. Good day considering he started P7. Russell P4, but to me, the driver of the day, and I can't believe fans voted Max for the driver of the day. It was hilarious seeing the graphic saying you started P3, ended P10, and it's driver of the day. But no, for me, the driver of the day particularly was Nico Hülkenberg. I mean, P15 to P5 in that Sauber. Are you kidding me? Unbelievable. Highest points finished since I believe Monza in 2019. I don't think I don't know the last time Sal were even in the top five. It could have been like 3, 4 years ago. Who knows? But unbelievable drive from Hulkenberg again. I don't know. He just man was on a mission this past weekend. He really had a great start off the line, as I mentioned earlier, getting into P10 after lap two and just hammered home the lap. Strategy was on point. So hands off to you, Sauber, who are now, I believe, like P6 in the championship or something like that, or P7, because Nico with now his P7 finish and his P5 finish is P11 in the championship. Ahead of like Stroll and Alonso, all these teams, all these guys, right? So kudos to Hulkenberg there. Lewis P6. We had Hadjar, another points finish for the rookie at Racing Bulls P7. Gasly P8. Alonso finally secures points at home. Well, secures points for the season, and it's at home. Benefit of the doubt, awesome there. P9 finish to get 2 points, and Max Verstappen finishing P10 after what was honestly a fantastic strategy until lap 60. Now, I guess the question for Red Bull fans, and this is where I'm gonna play um or my thought process here. So one, was it the right call for Max to go in for fresh rubber? I honestly think it was like probably the worst decision they could have made at the time. I get that you're on technically on old rubber with 6 laps to go against Lando and Piastri, who have fresher rubber behind you and whatnot. But I mean, it was like 8 lap old sauce when the safety car went out. And it's not like the rubber is getting really ripped up for when during those safety car laps. So he had about 6 laps worth of tire to go against, I guess, completely fresh rubber. But I mean, to me, Max in a position of P1 and getting his elbows out against the McLarens behind, I trust him more in that sense to be able to compete um, from a physical standpoint against the cars, but also from a mentality standpoint, being in P1 and defending off against the McLarens that, eventually you maybe do get into P3 or P4 at the end of the day if it all went the same way in terms of him getting past. Now, when you have him pitting for hards, you can tell he's clearly just pissed off. And unfortunately for Max, um just his mannerisms just went like, kind of got more and more upset. And he was just like, F this, especially as soon as he binned it on on the restart, almost bending it on the restart, getting past, he just got so pissed off and it just led into a, moment of rage, unfortunately. And that's when he kind of, took the penalty in the time and really like hurt him. I mean, that's 17 points lost, man. So that's like, for me, I think they should have just kept him out there because at the end of the day, you can just say, well, we only had was a hard tire left. And, if he lost the position, that's fine. I think Red Bull fans, I'm not going to speak for them, but I think that they would be more apt to be okay with the result if Max finished P3 or P4 trying to defend off McLaren as opposed to this P10 where he just, had tires that he was just going to get obliterated by everyone behind him because everyone else had fresh softs. So, Red Bull fans, please let us know your thoughts on that. For me, should have stayed out. Should have stayed out. Should have fought in that P1 position to try and win the race in that case. Um, but with all that said, I mean, Oscar is now 10 points ahead of Norris in the championship, driver side wise, and 49 points ahead of Verstappen, which is now gains the question, is this now Oscar's championship to fight for? Because we're going to go be into round 10 of in Canada next week in Montreal. And we're starting to now see at the point of season where it's like, okay, maybe as I said, it kept being early, but now is at a point where if Oscar continues to pull away or pushes away from Lando, is this now, Oscar's championship to be able to lose, and that maybe he now gets those preferential treatments at McLaren overall. So. that's kind of all my thoughts of the Spanish Grand Prix. We will be back next week, Richie, myself, and Erica, for a preview of the Canadian GP, which we're very excited about. Richie will be there. Unfortunately, Erica and I cannot attend this year's race, but Richie will definitely be there. So please look out for all on the F1 Podcast Instagram page for all of our social media updates. Richie is going to be there talking to fans. We should be, please see him as much as you can when you're there. But for myself, this is Andrew Cleary, the F1 Podcast, Season 5, Episode 11. I hope everyone listening had a wonderful day. And yeah, let me know what your thoughts are heading into Canada. Is this technical directive going to help anybody else in the team? Is this just McLaren, just the absolute beast of a car? And now that Max is one penalty or point penalty away from a race ban. Do you think this changes driving style a little bit, considering how it's P3 in the championship? Who knows? We'll find out in a couple weeks or next week for the Canadian GP. But uh, if you can, please follow us on all, Instagram, TikTok, as well as use our link tree to access all of our podcasts. Greatly appreciate it. But we will see you next week for a preview of the Canadian Grand Prix. See you then.